Well, folks, we are back with another March of the Lich King card review, and boy, this one's got time travel dragons. Yeah, we got some Paladin dragons, crazy legendary here behind me. We got some Warlock discard stuff, but let's kick it off here with Anachronos, a 7-mana 8/8 dragon with Battlecry. Send all other minions 2 turns into the future. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, based on the reveal video that we saw, I'm pretty sure it works this way. You play this and basically all other minions are poofed out of existence for 2 turns, and then they are resummoned onto the board, and any that don't fit seem to kind of just get poofed away, I guess. And that means essentially here that Anachronos functions as a board clear of sorts. It's a board delay, right? But it solves you any crazy boards, at least for a little while also, of course, just depositing an 8/8. This is all other minions. So it's a really nice 7-mana swing for a couple turns, where if you're playing against, you know, a board-based deck with a lot of aggressive minions, you can kind of get this great big board clear out a turn sooner and get this 8/8 down a little sooner than you would otherwise be able to, because, you know, they wouldn't print like a 7-mana Twisting Nether with Anachronos that just totally removes the board. But stalling them out, yeah, okay, that's fine. So we're gonna get this down a little sooner, help us stabilize a turn or 2 earlier, and then, you know, also just start hitting the opponent with an 8/8, and maybe that's enough counter pressure to like race down an aggro deck. Just dome them for 16 or something before they get their board back, or just stall until you either want to spend your real hard removal, just making them commit even more stuff into play so that finally your, you know, equality consecration clears as much as possible, kind of stacking up their freshest wave of minions along with the ones that you sent into the future, or just buying time to find it if you don't have your equality consecration yet. Just hold on, and Anachronos will give you that time you need in order to find your removal or your win condition, whatever it might be. So I actually think this is a really nice card. I think the fact that it's only pseudo removal is okay. I think it still offers enough windows of opportunity to solve problems later, but also just to create counter pressure now as an 8/8, and that is such an enormously big swing that a lot of decks are going to have a problem with that, particularly more aggressive board-based decks that might not have an easy answer to this 8/8. This is going to feel really, really good to play. We're going to see some dragon synergy stuff in this video, but I don't think you need that for Anachronos. I think this is totally fine standalone card. Toss this into a control deck, whatever it might be, and Anachronos works out pretty nicely. So I think this card looks really, really strong. Moving on to the other dragon cards here for Paladin, we've got the Time Warden here, a 4-mana 3/5 dragon. Battlecry until the end of your next turn. Dragons you summon gain Taunt and Divine Shield. So you play this guy on 4, and you set up for a really nice turn 5, and you know, you get these extra keywords there, and, you know, a nice taunted Divine Shield dragon could be a little bit of a high friction problem for the opponent to get through. That said, you are playing a 3/5 on turn 4, which I don't think you're thrilled about. This is a pretty big down tempo play compared to what a lot of people would be trying to do with their turn 4s. We are going to get at least one dragon that looks like it's a decent follow-up to this, although still not great, frankly. I don't think that card's great in a vacuum either. And there aren't a lot of awesome dragons in Standard right now. We're actually losing some of the best dragons at the next rotation, so we only have like a few months, for instance, of Kazakhstan, who could be a really big payoff for a like dragon deck. We did get a new neutral dragon support card, that the deal 3 Battlecry guy. That seemed pretty nice, but ultimately I don't see a beautiful like tempo dragon deck coming together where there's like amazing swings on turn 5, and then of course you could play this later in the game too, and then lead into like a turn 8 where you're playing 2 of these 4-drop guys, and like, yeah, okay, that's a little better, but for some reason it still doesn't seem that good to me. And having to play the Time Warden feels like a pretty high overhead as well. So this is a significant downturn to set up what I think won't really feel like that powerful of a follow-up, particularly given the current assortment of dragons. This feels like the kind of package that's going to need a lot more support, and these cards to me don't really seem good enough to make it worth it right now. And even if we get more dragons in the future, I just don't see this deck looking like these pieces are powerful enough to stand on their own as a package in a deck. So that doesn't stop Anachronos from being good, but I don't see these other dragons making a ton of sense. Let's go ahead and talk about the Daring Drake here since I teased it. This is a 4-mana 4/4 dragon with Rush and Battle Cry. If you're holding a dragon, gain +1/+1, so that makes it a 4-mana 5/5 with Rush. Honestly, that's not that great. We've had some like just vanilla 5/4 Rush minions for 4 mana a while ago in Hearthstone. So getting a 5/5 with Rush as your like upside reward for running dragons, I'm not convinced that's amazing. And of course, if you whiff on that, a 4/4 with Rush, definitely nothing exciting. I mean, if you are running a bunch of things that demand you hold dragons, you're going to need dragons, and like maybe this makes the cut just because you need enough dragons to get there. But I do not think you're super excited to play this most of the time, and this is certainly not an incentive to like run a dragon deck. This isn't why you're doing it. You're not excited about this. So this feels like one of those cards that's very fringe at best. And I'm not even sure some dragon decks would really feel compelled to run these things. You know, we've seen these like Kazakhstan dragon decks and Paladin pop up here and there that are just happy to run like a couple Amalgam of the Deeps and a couple other dragons to get to Kazakhstan and then don't commit to a full package. I could easily see these being left out of decks, even if they are running an assortment of dragons. I just don't think these look that great. And then next up here, we have the Flight of the Bronze, a new 1-mana spell for Paladin. This one allows you to discover a dragon and mana thirst 7, summon a 5/5 Drake with Taunt. So I like this a little more. This is another one of those cards that feels, you know, almost, it doesn't need dragon support to work. You can just toss this into a control deck as a way to discover something good. You know, I think on average, the dragons aren't great. As we just saw a couple that, you know, demand synergies and aren't really that high powered independently of anything else. So, you know, the pool might be a little too off for this, but we've seen certainly dragon discovers work well. Getting an Anachronos, getting a, you know, an Onyxia, getting an Alexstrasza, there are certainly some payoffs here where you're pretty likely to, I'd say, to get one high-powered dragon. And then, of course, if you do play this late in the game, which sometimes will happen, you just, you know, top deck this late, you're also going to get that immediate 5/5 Drake with Taunt. And that certainly feels good in the kind of deck that's playing a little bit more control, playing a little bit greedier. Getting a free 5/5 with Taunt's going to line up rather nicely. And then you're also just, you know, perhaps filling and finding a great play for that turn as well, all off of the Flight of the Bronze. So you can weave this in early if you want, or you can just save this for later and get some really, really big payoffs. I'll Fly to the Bronze. So I think this card actually looks pretty good. So next up here, let's take a look at some Warlock cards. We've got ourselves a little bit of a discard package coming together here for Warlock. First up, let's talk about the Scourge Supplies, a 3-mana spell. This one draws you 3 cards, and then you get to choose one to discard. Actually getting to choose our discard. How nice. It's always random in Hearthstone. You know, sometimes there's a little bit of controlled randomness, but still can feel pretty bad. In this case, you're straight up getting to pick it based on one of the 3 cards that you draw. And I think that's pretty nice. This is just, you know, in some ways people will say it's an Arcane Intellect, but it's better than that. It's better than just 3-mana draw 2, because you're drawing the 2 best cards out of 3. That choice ensures that your draws are going to be a little bit higher quality on average. Not to mention, as we're going to see with some of the cards in this video, there are potentially discard upsides. You can actually discard something that is going to be good to discard. It's going to give you a bonus if you discard it. So in those cases, that 3rd card gets even more value. But even if it doesn't, even if you're just picking any 3 random cards in your deck, even if you're not running a discard package, I actually still think this is a pretty neat little card draw card. It's not quite as like hyper efficient as some of the things like Impending Catastrophe. So some decks might still prefer to run a little imp package and a catastrophe just to give themselves raw card draw output. But this is a little bit more finessed in a way, and some other decks might prefer this sort of card draw instead, just being able to pick the 2 best cards and run with it. And then of course you got discard upsides as well. So I think this card is actually pretty good at a base level, and then has some potential discard synergies. I'm not quite as sold on the rest of this discard package, but Scourge Supplies looks like a really solid card, at least to kick things off. So next up, let's talk about some of the discard rewards here. This is Soul Barrage, a new 5-mana shadow spell for Warlock. When you play or discard this, deal 6 damage randomly split among all enemies. So this is kind of like a modern take on like Fist of Jaraxxus. That one would deal 4 to a random enemy. This deals 6 split among random enemies. I would certainly prefer to deal 6 split up, I think, than dealing 4 all at once. It says a higher chance to fit a better arrangement of boards. You know, it can take out, you know, 3 or 4 1/1s and still get a little chip damage face. It could just send straight up 6 damage to face. So, you know, we've seen many cards that are this kind of shape. There's like Avenging Wrath of old, there's like Cinder Storms. Now, if you're actually playing this at 5 mana, I think that feels pretty darn expensive for deal 6. That is not very favorable compared to a card like Cinderstorm. That one would deal 5 for 3 mana, if you remember. So pretty high premium here on the cost for Soul Barrage. I do not think anybody ever wants to spend 5 mana playing this card unless it's exactly lethal, which I guess could happen on occasion, but most of the time this will not be the most efficient way for you to deal damage. So is it worth it from a discard aspect? Well, it certainly feels okay to discard this. It's better to discard a real card, obviously. That said, I still don't know that it's pushing quite enough. We've had discard try so many things throughout the years, and it's only ever worked if it's really tempo-y based. It's like Silverwork Golems and Malchezaar's Imps, and it's just like go, go, go. And it's just really hard to get this deck to come together without this perfect critical mass of discard stuff that lines up really, really well. And I worry that since this one isn't as much about, you know, developing a more aggressive board, and that's historically the only discard success we've really seen, and there's so many other times this package is completely whiffed, that, boy, I don't know if this is enough. I don't think this hits anywhere close to that critical mass. We got one more card coming. I'm still not convinced that does the job either. So I do worry a little bit here. I think these have to be really pushed. In other words, the power levels of these have to seem great in order to get play. And I think the power level of this just seems okay. You know, I don't think this is crazy enough that it makes the traditional downsides of discard decks, when you don't hit the right targets, when you whiff, when you're losing all those resources, when it goes poorly, right, you have to be able to compensate for when it goes bad with some crazy upside. And I don't think this gets to that crazy upside level just yet. So next up here, we have our other discard reward. This is Walking Dead, a 3 mana 2/5 undead with taunt. If you discard this minion, summon it. So this looks a lot like the sort of Silverware Golem payoff. We've got all these like modernized versions of the old discard stuff. And you know, I think this is comparable or better to Silverware Golem. It's a 2/5, so more total stats than a 3/3 like Silverware Golem. It's got Taunt, which is a nice keyword. It's even got some undead synergy potential. So a few different ways to slice this one that do look better than Silverware Golem. That said, I will say a 2/5 today, I don't know, is better than a 3/3 for free back in the day when Silverware Golem was good. I'll also note that the 2 attack here is technically a little less threatening than a 3/3, and arguably trades a little less well in the early to mid game than a 3/3. So in some ways, despite this having a higher total stat line, I'm not sure it's as well aligned against the contextual board states it might face, nor is it perhaps as powerful in the era in which it lives. So yes, straight head to head, they look better. It looks better than Golem, but in reality, in context, I don't know that it actually will feel better than Silverware Golem in many scenarios. It's like, okay, I'm getting this 2/5 down. It's going to be a little bit of a, you know, disruptive board thing to my opponent. They can't really get through it easily. Maybe it's protecting other minions on board, but which ones is it protecting? Is it really making a big enough impact? Is it actually killing stuff when it comes down? Or is it just a little bit of a speed bump? And is that good enough? Like, so I guess the question is, does this feel a little bit too fair again to make up for the downsides of discard? Because it has to be good. It has to be really great when it hits. You have to really swing when it hits, because there are going to be so many games where you don't hit, where you whiff, where things go poorly. And again, I'm not really confident, which, by the way, I'm so sad. I love discard Warlock. I always love trying to make it work, but I'm not buying in just yet. So next up here, let's talk about this guy, the Savage Ymir Jar, a new 5 mana 7/7 undead. He's got Rush and Battlecry, discard 2 cards. So this is the modern version of Doomguard. We've got a modern take on all of these. This is the 5 mana discard 2 guy, but unlike Doomguard, this has Rush and a little extra stat line. And sadly, I don't really think this even comes close to Doomguard, because being able to go face with Doomguard was such a powerful play. And it created so much damage output, and it was so hard to deal with as a 5/7. And the Ymir Jar is likely to be as relevant, I don't think, because it can't hit you for 5. It's, you know, yeah, it's a big 7/7. Yeah, it takes some trades on board, but you could have done that with a Doom Guard too, right? 5/7 was often big enough to take great trades anyway. And again, we're 8 years along since Doom Guard, right? That was a classic card. So I just do not think this escalates the stat line, escalates the power level enough compared to what could already be done in Discard Warlock. Like, all of these cards are slightly new versions, slightly better versions of the old ones, and I think they needed to be dramatically better versions in order to really make Discard Warlock feel compelling. So, you know, you're never going to run this outside of a discard deck, number one. I think the risk of losing 2 cards is not worth the tiny stat upside here that the Ymir Jar offers. So this is strictly a discard-only sort of card. Like, yes, in a perfect world, if your Ymir Jar is played and it discards exactly your Walking Dead and your Soul Barrage, you have a great turn. I don't think that's actually going to happen too often. I think very, very often you're going to discard real cards, things you're sad to lose. You'll have already discarded a couple of your reward cards. You won't have many left because I don't think there's a critical mass just yet. Like, you know, we are sort of sitting in wait. Like, yes, if they eventually print, you know, 5 or 10 Walking Deads or Soul Barrage style cards, and you can guarantee that every discard is hitting and every turn you're making some big swings off your discards, of course, this deck will eventually get there. But we kind of have to ask ourselves, is that likely to happen? Are they really going to commit to getting that critical mass of discard? Are there going to be enough things that pay all of this off? And I just don't think so. And as it stands right now, I don't have the confidence to say that these are coming together as a great discard deck. We will absolutely try this. I can't wait. I love discard stuff, but I'm not convinced. So there's one more discard card. And then finally, we have the Amorphous Slime here. This one's intriguing. 5 mana, 5/3, Battlecry, discard a random undead. Now, keep in mind, both the Savage Ymir Jar and the Walking Dead are undeads in this case. And then Death Rattle, summon a copy of it. So the real high roll, of course, here is hitting the Ymir Jar. And then the Amorphous Slime, when it dies, is summoning you a 7/7, which you've negated the Battlecry of. The Battlecry doesn't go off because it's never being played. And then sometimes you also get a Walking Dead immediately. Get a 2/5 and another 2/5 on the Death Rattle of the Amorphous Slime. And yeah, I mean, obviously, again, that's a big pile of stats, but you are kind of playing this Amorphous Slime that's just a 5/3 for 5 mana. So even if you do get a 7/7 Death Rattle out of it, I will maintain that's not that crazy in modern Hearthstone, sadly. It's good, it's fun, it's a good play, but it's not like, oh my god, that's the reason I'm doing this deck. That's so broken that's the reason, that's so swingy that I have to play this deck. I don't think so. I think your best case scenario is just a good play. You know, it's one of those things like, if you don't kill it off for a turn, okay, opponent just kind of leaving my 5/3 out. Oh, it got frozen. Oh, well, they silenced it. You know, there's just a lot of risk baked into this and not that much upside. So I hate to be such a downer on this package because I love Discard Warlock. This archetype has always been one of my favorites. You know, I tried so hard to make this work in like Rosticon's Rumble, and there's been many eras since I've tried to make it work. So I'm hopeful. I hope this comes together. I hope this all works, but I think every card needs to be pushed just a little bit higher. Like add a stat point here, reduce the mana cost here, make these backup plans better, and give us more of this, and then we're talking. But as it stands right now, I'm just not that hopeful. I hope you guys can convince me otherwise. Tell me why you love these cards and they're all going to be amazing, because I'm not seeing it just yet. Anachronos is a 4-star card. Time Warden is a 3-star card. Flight of the Bronze is a 4-star card. Daring Drake is a 2-star card. Amorphous Slime is a 2-star card. Savage Ymir Jar is a 2-star card. Walking Dead is a 3-star card. Soul Barrage is a 2-star card. Scourge Supplies is a 4-star card. And there you go, folks. That wraps it up for this review. What do you think about these cards? Share your thoughts and more. Is Dragon Paladin going to get there? Is Discard Warlock going to get there? I am curious to hear your takes. Talk me into loving these cards. I do love Anachronos. I think this looks awesome. That said, thank you, love you, and until next time, game on.